My intention in this following video series is to explain the truth about what happened in my life over the past 2 years, explain truthfully who my kid's bio parent is. I'm going to be talking about the trail of destruction that they left behind. A lot of you on social media know my ex as a man. They were female to male transgender. You may know that I paid for her top surgery. What you don't know yet is that she has since detransitioned, so in this story, I will be using she, her pronouns to still maintain being respectful of that. I'm also going to be changing the names in this story as to protect myself so that I don't get sued. This story is very complex and will be told in parts, so please be patient with me. I know that I don't have to address anything that I don't want to, but I put so much of my family out on social media that I want to give you guys an explanation as to why she's no longer in the children's lives. I want to give you an explanation as to what caused the deterioration of the relationship. It is my hope that telling my story will not only help me heal from the years of trauma that she put me through and my family through, but also help somebody else who may be going through a similar situation or the same thing. Before we get into this series, I want to let you know that the topics we will be discussing are very messy and very real. I'm going to be discussing the entirety of our relationship, including the times I got cheated on, an emotional court case against a pedophile, SA or domestic violence, and the missing persons. I'm going to be talking about how I was betrayed, lied to, manipulated, and repeatedly ghosted by somebody I thought was my life partner. Because of her, I spent a year of my life in the court system trying to protect my children against her pedophile boyfriend. For over a year, she repeatedly tried to put my children in a toxic environment. And for over half of my life, she used me every chance she got and then traded me in whenever there was a better option. There are several twists and turns in this story, so I'm going to be telling it in parts just because there's a lot of information to dissect. Last thing I want to mention before getting started on this expose, I am imploring the court to change their system because there were way too many failures that y'all had while I was trying to get custody of my kids and protect my kids away from a registered offender of children. Thank you guys for your patience and get ready. Who the fuck did I have kids with? Part 1. Before we get started, I want to mention that I recorded part of this video using real names, so you'll be hearing bleeps throughout parts of the video, but moving forward, you'll be hearing me use those changed names. To my trans followers who know my ex as a man, I want to mention this. She has since detransitioned, so I will be using she, her pronouns to maintain respect of that. If you want to find out more, watch the series. We'll get there. There were so many signs that God was trying to send me that this was not your person, and I just ignored every single one. Me and my ex met in 10th grade, and her name was Jessica at the time, which is important because her name will change throughout this story, as will her gender and will her pronouns. I told you this is going to be a very complex story. A little something about me, when I'm in a relationship with a person, that's my person. You know what I'm saying? I'm done. So in 10th grade, I was out the game. And I fall hard. I thought that she was the same exact type of person. I was wrong because not only 5 months later did she cheat on me for the first time. When she brought it up to me, she told me that the only reason she cheated was because a mutual friend pushed her to do it. Remember that. The first time getting cheated on was excruciating because the friend who convinced her to cheat, she died in a car accident the next day on the way to school. So for the longest time, I didn't have any closure as to what truthfully really happened. To make matters worse, Jessica didn't tell me about the cheating until about 4 months after our mutual friend passed. So to this day, I have no idea if she actually pushed her to cheat or if Jessica just blamed it on a dead person. I have no idea. That's not on me to say that I want any explanation or I want accountability to be taken. I don't. It more so points to how I felt about myself in that particular moment. I had no self-love. I was very much insecure, and I felt that without her, I wouldn't have anybody. The lesson that I believe God was teaching me was to treat yourself better and to have higher standards for yourself. But did I listen? When I trust hard. So after some healing, we finally had some conversations, and I sat down and I forgave her because I genuinely thought that she wasn't going to cheat on me again. That thought did not last long. Next year of our relationship was good, you know, as far as high school relationships are concerned. We write notes back and forth, naming our future children. May of 2010 rolls around, and she just breaks up with me. Not only did she break up with me, she broke up with me via Kelly Clarkson song lyrics. The song Already Gone by Kelly Clarkson haunted my mind for years. Minutes after Jessica broke up with me, she posted the song lyrics on Facebook. Let that sink in. I never felt embarrassment like that because all of my friends at the time were asking me what happened, because everybody knew we were dating. At the time, I was struggling with feelings of not being enough. So I asked her just straight to her face, what happened? Why am I not enough? Why did you not choose me? She told me she just needed time to herself to figure things out. 3 days later, She gets into a relationship with a girl named Katie. Couple things. First off, what do we know about a person when they get out of a relationship and get into one in a very short amount of time? Y'all was already talking beforehand. Second thing I want you to remember, this is the second time now that she has traded me in for somebody else because she wanted something better. When we broke up, I was devastated. One, because she had left me for a woman. So my ego took a huge hit. I had no idea how to recover from that. Additionally, I had a really bad home life, and I'll go in depth in that on another series. But her family very much represented a safe space for me, and they took me in very much like Blindside with Michael Orr. We broke up, I didn't have that safe space anymore, so I very much spent the rest of that summer and leading into the fall sad and single and suffering under the abuse that my mother was putting me through. Fast forward to winter, junior year. At this point in time, my home life has gotten so bad that a social worker from the school comes to the house and tells me that I have to stay someplace else or she will place me somewhere. Guess who stepped up for me in a time of need?
Jessica's
Parents.
Tom and Sarah.
Get to the house and Tom tells the social worker, I don't want Moses to be put in the system, and at least this way he'll be around his family and in the same school district. I'm forever grateful for those two because you two saved my life in a time that I needed it and you did not know. Thank you. At this point in time, me and Jessica are now living together under the same roof as her parents and her 3 sisters. She comes downstairs the first night I'm there to tell me that she and her girlfriend are not working out and that she misses me. You know, and at that point, I was feeling real good because the person that you left me for is not working out with. She continues on discussing the problems that she's having in her relationship, and she says that her girlfriend doesn't respect her because she identifies as something called trans. If you've been living under a rock and don't know what being trans is, it's basically being born in the opposite gender's body. She told me that a lot of stuff started to make sense because she had always been very tomboyish, so I was just easily accepting of that. Later that night, we hooked up and they stayed together for another week before breaking up. Please treat yourself better than I did because about a week after Jessica and her girlfriend split up, I got back with her. She made promise after promise that she would never leave me, that she was never going to cheat on me again, and I truthfully believed her. When I trust hard. It was around January of 2011, which was our senior year. Keep this in mind. That January, she comes out to the school and she tells everybody that she wants to be called a different name, James. It is also important to note that she was still using she, her pronouns at this time. By April of 2011, our counselor told us both that we didn't have enough credits to graduate and that we would have to do another year. We were both like, if we're going to do it, let's do it together. Let's graduate. Fast forward to April of 2012. We were filling out college applications. We applied to several colleges, but none of them would take us due to our low GPA until Shawnee State University. We both applied to Shawnee State, but I was the only one who got an acceptance letter. Here's the crazy thing. Despite my toxic home life, my mother actually agreed to sign off on the papers to take out loans for me to go to Shawnee State University. My home life was so bad that at one point I tried to commit just to get out of my circumstances. And I'm so glad that it was a failed attempt. But just to give you some context, it was finally my chance to get out. I sit down and I talk with Jessica about it. And I was still calling her Jessica at this point in time because she was still not out to her family. I told her that I got accepted and I told her that I wanted to go because I could stay on campus and I finally had that chance to get out. She made me feel as though if I went, we would break up. Intentionally or unintentionally, that is a guilt trip, and I want y'all to know that. I had such an abandonment wound and a fear of being alone that I chose not to go to school for her. After we graduated high school, we enrolled in Tri-C, which is Cuyahoga Community College. It was the only college that would accept both of us. That being said, I had to stay at home instead of living on campus. That being said, my home life suffered. That being said, my grades suffered. I was on the verge of dropping out of college as a freshman, just because I didn't have the wherewithal to be able to keep up with my classes. And Jessica comes to me and she tells me that she applies to something called the Disney College Program. The Disney College Program offered students a chance to live on their campus while working and earning college credit. I did not like Disney at the time, but I saw this as my way out. She had already told me that she got accepted, which means that if I didn't get accepted, she was just going to leave. Which was ironic because that's exactly the thing that she didn't want me to do to her by going to Shawnee State. The program only selected a certain number of students, so I applied to the easiest job that I knew that they was hiring for, housekeeping. Shout out to the housekeepers. That job was hard. I got fired. I'll talk about that in a separate story time, but the funny thing is, she actually got fired 1 week before I did. Now, the Disney College Program mandates that if you get fired, you have 24 to 48 hours to vacate the premises. So when she got fired, I saved up all of my money and I put her up in a hotel for a week because she had no idea or no way to get back to Ohio. I was so tired from going back and forth from my job to her hotel, and I already didn't have any money. My work started to slip. The day that I got fired, Jessica calls to tell me that her aunt is going to be driving her up from Florida to Ohio. I remember I have 24 hours to vacate the premises, so I was like, come pick me up. She picks me up and we drive back up from Florida to Ohio, which means I am now back in the same circumstances that I escaped from back at my mom's house. I was desperately looking for more ways out when I finally came across another option, Cedar Point, which actually led me to getting cheated on again. Who the fuck did I have kids with? Part 2. Trigger warning, this story contains SA, domestic violence, P3DOs, a missing persons, and trans-sensitive topics. Cedar Point had a similar program where you work for them and then you can live on campus. So I saw this as another opportunity to escape. I applied to be a lifeguard. She applied to be a racetrack attendant. We moved out of our houses and we moved into the Cedar Point dorms and into our respective jobs. Jessica's career in racetrack lasted about 1 month before she switched to lifeguarding because she said that it was because she missed me. June of 2013, she gets approved for the transfer to lifeguarding. June of 2013, we break up. She broke up with me via text message and then texted me that she was sending her friend to my dorm to go pick up her stuff. I was blindsided and embarrassed because you just transferred here for me and then you break up with me. And we were very much the it couple, so everybody knew we were together. So again, everybody's asking questions. I had no explanation for them. For the next 3 days, we avoided each other at work like the plague. But at the end of that third day, she texted me that she wants me back and she wants to work on things. She wants to talk things out. I was still confused and didn't even have time to process the breakup. What she told me during our talk was that she developed a crush on my boss, who was in a relationship. And she felt guilty about it, so she wanted to break up with me so that she could have time to process her feelings. I was a 19-year-old kid who was scared and insecure about the world, and she was the only safe space for me. I was so broken inside and fearful of what could happen if I was without her. So I took her back, only to find out that a month later, she broke up with me, shot her shot, got rejected by him because he's again in a relationship, and then she pivoted back to me. Fast forward to fall of 2013. We moved out of the Cedar Point dorms and into our own apartment. I was working full time, paying all of the bills. She did not have a job. You will see that this was a theme throughout our relationship. I was the one supporting her. 2013 was a terrible year for me because I got cheated on twice in that year and twice in that apartment. It's fall of 2013. Mind you, Jessica is an avid gamer. This is important for this part of the story. At the time, I was working full-time, 12-hour shifts from midnight to noon. As I'm heading out to work, it's 11:55 p.m. I'm walking out the door and 4 guys walk into my house saying that they're going to start playing games with Jessica. Trigger warning, some of these stories include SA, domestic situations, a P3DO, missing persons, trans-sensitive topics, and cheating. Who the fuck did I have kids with? 2013 was a terrible year for me because I got cheated on twice in that year and twice in that apartment. Jessica is an avid gamer. This is important for this part of the story. At the time, I was working full-time, 12-hour shifts from midnight to noon. As I'm heading out to work, it's 11:55 p.m. I'm walking out the door and 4 guys walk into my house saying that they're going to start playing games with Jessica. When I trust hard. I leave, go to work, come home unaware of anything happening. About a month goes by and our relationship starts deteriorating. Like we just fighting, we're not getting along. And we were best friends at the time, so this is very uncharacteristic of us. She breaks down crying one night and she tells me that she cheated with the brother of one of the friends that she was gaming with. She told me that she was alone in a car with him one night and that he pressured her into it. She told me that she felt that she had no choice. And I believed it for a variety of reasons. Reason number 1, I was raised by a single mother. She always told me to believe a woman in any situation because more often than not, she's telling the truth. Reason number 2, Jessica was a victim of childhood abuse. Her neighbor was one of the biggest P3DOs in the state of Ohio's history, and he had an entire catalog. She was one of his favorite victims. She actually went on Oprah to describe her experiences and what it was like living next to this man. Combine all of that together, it made sense when she told me that she felt like she had to. I told her as long as she never talks to the dude again, that I could forgive her. She cut ties with him and we moved on as a happy couple, or so I thought. May of 2014, the following year, I got cheated on again. After Jessica cheated on me for the 4th time, I took her back. I know you may be thinking, why did I do that? I didn't have any value in myself. I was afraid to find out who I was without her, and I placed her over myself. I very much saw her as family, as an extension of me, and you don't leave family behind was very much my thought process. Fast forward to October 27th, 2016. We have our first son. From 2014 to 2016, our relationship was good. There was no cheating that I knew of. We were solid, and our family was finally whole, complete. At the time when my son was born, we were paying $450 a month in rent, living in Elyria, Ohio. Elyria is poverty. I'm not playing. Like, my downstairs neighbors literally got drug busted. I'm pretty sure the roaches were high. I was working full time and going to school full time, busting my ass to try to provide for my family because, again, Jessica was not working. I wanted to afford her the ability to be able to stay home, to raise the kids, and I'll be the one that's working. That was the life that she wanted, so that was the life that I wanted to provide for her. I grinded as hard as I possibly could for that next year, and I was so proud of myself because I got a 3.8, I made Dean's List, and I proved to myself that my circumstances in high school and the first time in college were not going to be this time. February 6th of 2018, we have another major life event, the birth of my second son, Jalen. I'm stressed, worried, and anxious about how am I going to be able to take care of two children on a Papa John's salary while working full-time in school. That is when we got a very interesting call from her aunt. Jessica's aunt tells her that she's going to give her, Jalen, Moses Jr., and myself $15,000 each to do whatever we want with. It was a huge blessing and took us completely by surprise because her aunt was racist. It was just a fact within the family. Her aunt, the same aunt that drove us up from Florida, she told us that she saw how hard our lives were, so she wanted to do anything that she could to help us out. So when we took that money, it was $60,000, and we bought a house. We bought our first house in June of 2018. Remember that, though, that is a significant milestone. Move in, things are going great. I apply to nursing school and get in on the first try, which is very difficult for any nursing students that know. October 29th, I get approved for weight loss surgery. So this year, it was shaping up to be amazing until I got cheated on again. It's now fall of 2018, and Jessica is gaining a following on this app called TikTok. She's going live every night, making a bunch of friends. And at this time, I had no idea what it is. I did not have social media at all whatsoever, which is very ironic. It was late December, and our relationship started to fall apart. And she said that it was because I was working too much and going to school too much. I was literally working full time to support our family because she wasn't working. So she broke up with me. Next week, the live stream started to get a lot more flirty. Now, mind you, I was a broke college student. I didn't have any money to go anywhere, and we just bought this house. So she took the upstairs, I took the downstairs. It only been broken up for a week, and I was trying to get her back because based on our history, we would break up and then get right back together. So that's what I thought was about to happen again. We were only broken up for a week when she told me that there was no chance of us getting back together again because she's starting to fall for this girl that she met on the lives named Stephanie. A week later, they started dating. Now, what do we know when you start dating somebody directly after a breakup? Y'all was already talking beforehand. To twist the knife even further, she said that Stephanie gave her the courage to come out fully. Jessica then tells me that she wants me to call her James now and call her he, him pronouns. So from now on, throughout this point in the story, I will be referring to her as him and Jessica as James. Keep up. I was so heartbroken because I had done nothing but try to support them and encourage their transition. So to hear somebody else getting credit for it felt very much like a low blow. James then goes on and informs me that he wants the children to call him dad instead of mom. I had felt like my entire world got upended because not only did I just lose my significant other, not only did I just lose my life partner, but I lost my best friend at the same time. I felt like everything I was working for, everything that I was sacrificing for was just for no reason, just evaporated almost overnight. I was so low and depressed that night I went downstairs and I started writing letters. I wrote a letter to my mom. I wrote a letter to my brothers, and I wrote a letter to my sons, and I wrote a letter to James himself, addressing why I will no longer be here and moving forward what I want with the kids. Throughout everything that I had been through in my life, and then including with them just in general, I couldn't take it anymore. I remember bawling my eyes out while writing those letters, literally tears falling on the paper, when the craziest thing happened and the biggest blessing that I believe in my entire life. I was in the middle of my second son's letter, the final letter, when I just woke up. I had no recollection of falling asleep. I just woke up, and I thank God to this day that I'm still here. I woke up like 6 a.m. that morning, and I saw the letter still on my lap. I stood up, walked over to the trash can, I threw them away. God told me I got more to live for. That day, I downloaded TikTok. The next month, I tried to get back with James, but he told me that he was madly in love with Stephanie and that there was no shot. I was heartbroken at first, but I eventually found acceptance in it. And then I even thought, as far as if this is going to be a person that's in your life, then let me try to, develop a relationship with them. So I started actually talking to Stephanie. Remember that. I found out that Stephanie was actually pretty cool. So I was so accepting of their relationship. About a month after, Stephanie breaks up with James. Stephanie says, "I'm sorry, I'm just not into trans people." James, my baby daddy, is now upset and distraught because everything that he wanted with this girl is now just been taken away. What do you think James did? You're right, tried to come back to me. At this point in time, I was so riddled with trust issues that I did not want them back, but they still were my best friend at the time. And I was still a broke college student, so I didn't have any money to move out. We decided to stay in the same house together, raise the kids as dad and dad, remain best friends. In May of 2019, I was so stressed out from the pressure of providing for my family because I was not working enough hours to adequately provide, but I was also working too many hours to provide adequate attention to my nursing studies. These were people's lives, so I had to drop my classes. Dropped out with a 3.8, and it was the hardest thing that I ever had to do because I really wanted to graduate. I really wanted to provide better for my family, but I knew that this was the decision that I had to make, so I picked up more hours at Papa John's. Still, I was the only one working. In June of 2019, something magical happened. I started to blow up on TikTok. Started to gain a huge following telling the stories of the things that I lived through, just the events that have happened in my life. By the end of 2019, I had like 2 or 3 million followers. Started opening up and talking more about my family dynamic because now we were a family of 2 dads, 2 single dads, raising 2 children together. Who the fuck did I have kids with? Part 5. Trigger warning, this story contains SA of the adult and child kind, P3DOs, domestic situations, a missing persons, trans-sensitive topics, and cheating. Before we get started again, I just want to take a minute to thank Risa Tisa for having the courage to share her story and inspiring me to share mine. Without your strength, none of this would have been possible. We're going to pick back up in the story about June of 2019 when I started to tell you a little bit about Stephanie. If you don't remember, Stephanie was the ex of my baby daddy, James. Stephanie and I at this point have developed a very good friendship, so much so that me, her, and James are in a 3-way group chat. Remember that. October 2019 rolls around and the money from social media is rolling in, so I bought James a car. At this time in my life, even though we were broken up, they were still very much my best friend, and I wanted to take care of them because my idea of family didn't revolve around us being together. During that time, James was trying to get back with me, and I could not trust them, so I told them that we could be friends with benefits instead. Remember that 3-way group chat between James, Stephanie, and me? From the minute we were in the group chat, the nature of the conversations were always like jokingly flirty. Over the next several months, those 3-way flirts became less jokey. Then it became less group chat and more me and Stephanie talking. It was December 2019, and by this time I had developed really deep feelings for Stephanie. We were still talking to group chat, but me and Stephanie started talking off on our own. Fast forward to March 2020. James comes downstairs with my iPad screaming. He saw the text messages between me and Stephanie, and he saw the feelings that were starting to develop. He FaceTimed her right there and questioned her about what was going on between us. She admitted that she had feelings for me. I was dealing with so much guilt for falling for the homie's girl that I said that I didn't feel the same. I came forward to James a few days later with my true feelings about Stephanie. He gave me an ultimatum. He told me that I had to choose between pursuing a relationship with Stephanie or having him and the kids in my life. I genuinely feared that if I pursued anything with Stephanie, that I would lose my kids. Me and James had a trauma bond so deep that I wasn't able to see at the time how wrong that was. I did not want to lose my kids, so I ultimately decided to stop talking to Stephanie. I take full accountability and responsibility for my actions, and how I handled it was not the best. I just ended up ghosting her without an explanation as to why I was leaving her life. But I want to make this point that it is never okay in any relationship for anyone to ever give you an ultimatum or threaten to leave you. That is a sign of abuse. Moving forward, in 2020, I started making a lot of money. We started going on trips. My success in social media had led us to a point where we were afforded opportunities to be in movies. I bought them a car. We stayed in fancy Airbnbs. Every single opportunity that I had, I brought James along with me. They had full access to my money. That is a very important part to note. In May of 2020, I got a girlfriend. Let's call her Taylor. Very early on, my relationship with Taylor put a strain on my relationship with my baby daddy, James. They did not like each other. Taylor didn't like James because she saw him for who he truly was, and James didn't like Taylor because she took attention away from him. In 3 weeks of me starting my relationship, James got into a relationship with another girl. Let's call her Gwen. She's very important to this portion of the story. Couple weeks into their relationship, James comes up to me and asks if he can move Gwen into the house. At this point, I was not aware of the absurdity of the situation. Baby daddy asking me if he can move his girlfriend of 2 weeks into the house that we both share together while raising 2 children together. Sounds crazy when you say it out loud. Keep up. I said yes because ever since me and Taylor started dating, Gwen was the only thing that made James happy. I genuinely just wanted to see my best friend happy. That was it. On June/July of 2020, Gwen moves into the house. Fast forward to August of 2020, my social media success has propelled us to a point where I've saved up enough money to be able to afford to pay for James's top surgery. It had been something he had been looking for his whole life, and he actually broke down in tears when I made the video about it. It was one of the greatest moments of my life, seeing how happy they were to have this lifetime achievement and the weight of these 2 things that they were carrying that they did not identify with. I saw how much of an important milestone it was for them, which made it all more confusing when they detransitioned. We'll talk more about that later. September/October 2020 rolls around, and here's where the story gets a little messy. I got into a really bad fight with Taylor one night, and she was contemplating if she wanted to stay in the relationship or leave. James was very much still in a relationship. Comes downstairs to my room one night, and I started to open up to him about some of the problems that was going on in my relationship. He started telling me about the problems that he was experiencing with Gwen, and for the first time in my life, I cheated. Me and James had been in a 10-year relationship, and not once had I ever cheated. It was one of the lowest points in my life, and I remember being incredibly disgusted with myself, not only for the hurt that I caused, but because I always prided myself on being a loyal person. I take full responsibility for my actions. But what was a low moment for me was just another example of James using me when he wanted me for his purposes, and then just discarding me when I didn't have that use. 2 weeks later, he breaks up with Gwen and drives her back to the state that she lived in. Fast forward to October 2020. James is single. I'm in a relationship with Taylor when we find out that Taylor has to have brain surgery. On November 2020, Taylor gets scheduled for brain surgery. At this time, me and Taylor had only been dating for a total of about 6 months, but we were very serious. Sometime after her surgery, we got into a big blow-up fight that resulted in me getting hung up on. I started venting to James about some of the things that she told me that troubled me, and he took every single one of those words and twisted them. At the end of our talk, James had me feeling like Taylor didn't even care about me. Later that night, we slept together. Before you go start judging me, I was in a toxic relationship with a lifelong best friend. I take full accountability for the actions that I caused, for the hurt that I caused. But yet again, this is another example of James coming to me at a low moment and using that to his advantage. Next several months go by, and James starts deteriorating. Ever since that last time we hooked up, I stopped giving him the attention that he wanted from me. I was dealing with so much guilt that it completely changed the dynamic of our relationship. We just didn't interact much anymore, just 2 strangers living in the same house. This whole time, we were still making content together. Y'all just didn't know this was happening behind the scenes. May 2021 was the start of the year that changed the course of our lives. Me and Taylor at this time are still in a relationship. She lived a couple cities away. I still lived in the same house with James. James's father, Tom, a man who very much helped to raise me, passed, and James was dealing with the depression from that. Something I want you to remember about Tom's passing. When he died, his pension was supposed to pay for his cremation. It was $2,000. The pension said it would be up to a year before the funds would be dispersed to pay for the cremation. And I had the money at the time, so I just said I'll pay for it and then pay me back when the money comes in from the pension. Remember that. About mid-June 2021, James meets this guy on a dating app. Let's call him Ryan. Ryan is a very important part of this story. I need you to remember his name. James is telling me all about Ryan and about this date that they're about to go on. And this is genuinely the first time that I've seen him happy in months. Date went well. I was hyped that the bestie had a date. 2 weeks later, James tells me Ryan, his boyfriend, is a registered offender of children. Keep in mind that James is a victim of childhood SA, and their neighbor was one of the most notorious in the state of Ohio. I asked James, how did you find this out? And they said that my mom looked him up. I found out later that James only told me because his mom was going to if he didn't. In that moment, me and James sat down and had an in-depth conversation about what he wanted to do because it seemed like he wanted to continue to pursue the relationship with Ryan. I tried to give the benefit of the doubt because I had never seen James that happy. And Ryan, on the outside, on the surface, He looked like a squeaky clean guy. He had money. He came from a well-off family. I told James, if you're considering pursuing a relationship with this man, I need you, for the safety of the children, to ask him questions about the case, about what the trial was, about everything that went on, because that is a heavy, heavy charge. A couple days go by, and James has been spending the night at Ryan's house, and he has not been answering his phone. He finally gets in contact with me, and I ask him, did you ask questions to Ryan? Did you find out the details about the case? James tells me Ryan said it wasn't that big of a deal. It was overblown. It was a 14-year-old girl, and she was leading Ryan on. Ryan was a 27-year-old male the time this crime happened. I then asked her if she read the court docket, because the court docket said that he was a youth pastor who drove to another state, met this girl, and the police set up a sting, Chris Hansen style, to catch this man. Upon telling him this, James got mad at me for reading the court docket. I was over here concerned about the safety of the children, and they were concerned about me splitting up their relationship. James told me that he needed some time to think about what he wanted to do. I was like, take the time you need, because I thought that the obvious decision would make sense. A victim of childhood abuse being with a child abuser, it doesn't make sense. It was less than a week later when James called me and told me that he is moving in with Ryan, that he's taking the kids with him part-time. I said, no, the hell you're not. What I didn't know was that in the state of Ohio, there's something called super custody. Basically, if two parents are unmarried, custody goes to the birth giver and the father has no say. I was afraid that my children were going to sleep under the same roof as a pedophile. Who the fuck did I have kids with? Part 6. Trigger warning, this story includes SA of the child and adult kind, P3DOs, DV situations, childhood trauma issues such as abandonment and neglect. We're at the point in the story now where James, my baby daddy, has told me that he's going to be moving in with his boyfriend that he's known for 1 month, who we just found out is a registered offender of children. To give you a little bit of the dynamic of our house, even though we weren't together, me and James still operated very much as a couple. When it came to financial matters, I made the money, and they spent the money when it came to the bills. I actually found that act, for whatever reason, to be too stressful. So I would make it, they would spend it. Remember, that is very important for this portion of the story. It was July of 2021, and I was financially overwhelmed because I was footing the bill financially for 2 households. My girlfriend at the time, Taylor, was still recovering from brain surgery, and so she didn't have a job. So I was covering her bills. She had 2 kids, and I was still covering the bills for my house with James, and we had 2 kids together. When he up and decided to move, I didn't know that he had left all of the bills in arrears. Every one of the bills was late by months. Over the previous few months, the money had been coming in slower, but there was still more than enough to cover the bills and then some. So I have no idea what James was doing with the money. I no longer had the ability to pay for 2 households. So when James moved out, I moved Taylor and her kids in. After they move in, I sit down and I have a talk with Taylor about how to proceed next, because I've never in a million years thought that I would be in a situation with James, especially considering the fact that he himself was a victim of childhood abuse. Taylor tells me that she thinks that I need to get a lawyer. At the time, I did not have $5,000 to retain a lawyer. I was sitting there feeling hopeless because I thought within the next couple of days that my sons were going to be spending nights under the same roof as a P3DO. I was sick to my stomach because I felt like I failed by not being in a position to be able to keep them safe. I had to call around to several family members and friends asking to borrow money to start a court case. James calls me and he tells me that he's going to come and pick up the kids in 3 days and that there's nothing that I can do about it. And technically, he's right. On the last day, Taylor's friend came through and she let me borrow $5,000 so that I could get a lawyer and start a court case. I'm incredibly grateful for her because without her, I would not have been able to save my kids. Me and Taylor go into the lawyer's office. We start talking about options, and that's where the lawyer tells me about something called super custody. In the state of Ohio and in many other states, super custody is when an unmarried couple splits. The custody goes to the birth giver of the child. When I asked him what that means, the lawyer went in depth and gave me this analogy. He said, I have as many rights to your kids as you do. I asked him what that means, and he goes on to tell me if James wanted to take the kids out of state, he could do that. But if I wanted to take the kids out of state, and he did not want that, he could call the cops and it could technically be kidnapping. My own children. This is a state law. Like, that's actual, like, this is legal. If I didn't have that $5,000 to start the case, my kids would have been sleeping under the same roof as a pedo. And that's Ohio law. It's just one of my many concerns about this court system that I will be going over in this entire series. I further asked about my rights. I told the lawyer I was there during every single appointment. I was there during the birth of my children. I signed the birth certificates. What do you mean I don't have rights to my children? He said that I had to file a form with the court to establish that I was their parent, which basically ripped my heart out because I was like, what was the paper that I signed with that birth certificate stating that I'm their father? That was one of the proudest moments that I had in my entire life. And it felt like they took that away from me because it completely invalidated any experience that I had. I know that it may not sound serious, that it's just a piece of paper, but that was a very meaningful moment to me. The fact that I was there during every single moment for my children. That was something that I always wanted from my parents, and it wasn't something that I got, but I was able to give to them. And so sitting there in that lawyer's office and having him tell me that I didn't have any rights to my own children broke my fucking heart. Then tells me I need to retain him and I need to file a form establishing parental rights. At that point forward, we can establish an emergency temporary custody order. I want to clarify and identify something in this very, very, very moment. The court case was not against James. The court case was to keep the kids out of Ryan's house. July 2021, we hired the lawyer and filed the paperwork to establish emergency temporary custody and to establish my parental rights. The lawyer told me that it would take a week for the paperwork to be filed and processed. That means legally, I had to allow the kids to go over to James's and Ryan's new house. They had only been over there about once or twice before the lawyer called me and told me that my parental rights had been established and that we could proceed with filing the emergency temporary custody order. I had to act like everything was okay with James this entire time before we filed the emergency custody order, because if he knew, then he could file a countersuit. So my lawyer told me to be quiet. The day we filed the emergency temporary custody order, it's been 1 week since we hired the lawyer. That morning, I got out the shower and I fell to the floor crying. And Taylor came running into the room and she asked me what was wrong. I genuinely felt that in my soul. Starting this case meant that James would think I'm trying to keep the kids away from him because of his relationship. And because of that, he was going to take himself out. I thought that starting this case was going to mean losing my best friend. That is how warped this relationship had my mind. Focus on your kids always. Get up, I get dressed, we go to the courthouse, and we filed an emergency temporary custody order. That weekend, James calls me and he tells me he's about to come pick up the kids. And for the first time, I get to tell him, no, you are not taking the kids over to that house. He reacted as you would expect, and he went and lawyered up. Fast forward a month, and there's pretty much no contact until James calls me and tells me that Ryan has physically assaulted him. He also tells me that Ryan forces him to do things like shave, which is very significant because James was as a trans man, he was very proud of his facial hair. It helped him pass. James then goes on to tell me one very final significant point. He says that Ryan's ex reached out to him on Twitter and documented and detailed the abuse that they went through. They were also a trans man. This is now where Ryan's original arrest record, his original court case, comes into play. In 2011, Ryan got arrested for soliciting a 14-year-old girl. He was a youth pastor, and he was texting her illegal pictures, and he was actually on the way up to go see her when her parents found text messages from what this man was sending and sent them to the police, and the police set up a sting to catch him. After finding out all of this information, I am now under the impression that Ryan, your boyfriend, is a dangerous man. Not only does he do this to children, but he does this to adults as well. I get off the phone with James at that night, so worried that I came home and I asked my girlfriend at the time if she would be comfortable with James moving back in temporarily for his safety. Me and Taylor start having a deep discussion because now at this point we're talking about moving my baby daddy back in the house that we now share with our 4 kids. This conversation was tearing apart our house when 2 days later, James calls me and he tells me that him and Ryan worked it out and they're getting back together. Just before we got off the phone, James tells me he sees why I don't want the kids around Ryan and that he wants to drop the case. At this point, I was blindsided and I did not know what to do because you just expressed to me all of the ways in which you should not have kids around somebody. And then 2 days later, you're wanting to put them right back in that same environment. This is just one of the instances that I've had with Ryan. To this day, Ryan continues to have active warrants. Just last year, he crashed into a daycare while drunk driving and then evaded the police on foot, tossed his ID in the process, and then when police finally caught up to him, he claimed to be suicidal. So they took him into a hospital instead of the jail. There, he claimed to be a John Doe, signed himself out, AMA, and then evaded the police on an open warrant that he already had. This is the type of individual that the court system would have allowed my sons to go to, because the court system as it stands right now is heavily slanted towards women or towards birth givers, as you're going to find out further on in this series. After that first round of abuse in August of 2021, James went back to Ryan and told me that he wants to continue the case. Most devastating thing, I had no physical evidence. I did not record that conversation. James used me for emotional support, and once again, I feared for the safety of my children. September 2021, something very interesting happens. I told you to remember that I paid for James's dad's cremation because the pension was supposed to pay for it, but it was going to take up to a year for them to disperse the funds. Well, the check finally came in, but it was in James's name. Coming up next, we're going to be talking about the death benefit debacle, a stolen EBT card, and blackmail. Buckle up. Who the fuck did I have kids with part 7? This part of the story is a little bit more difficult for me, so please bear with me throughout this video. Trigger warning, this part of the story contains SA of the child and adult kind, pedos, and DV situations. Now at the point in the story where James, my baby daddy, has just told me over the phone for an hour-long conversation about the abuse that Ryan has just put him through. I recorded none of this conversation. Keep that in mind because there's a big plot twist that comes up later. August 2021, James goes back to Ryan for the first time and continues the court case. How do you go back into that situation knowing the abuse that you went through and then turn around and say that you deserve to have your kids in that same environment that you just got hurt from? A couple weeks go by and there's pretty much no contact between me and James. He has not even asked to see the kids yet. Just before the end of the month, I got a check in the mail that was addressed to James from the pension that was supposed to pay for his father's cremation. If you remember from the previous videos, the pension said that they would pay for his cremation, but it would take up to a year to release the funds. So I paid for the cremation under the deal that when that check came in, James would give it back to me. Call James to let him know that the check came in. And I want you to remember something very important. I asked James for half instead of the whole thing because, quote, I know you just moved out and you trying to get your stuff together too. I'm trying to get caught up on these bills. So instead of asking for the full thing, send me half. That way you can get yourself together. I can get myself together. He said, okay. And the next day they came to pick up the check. A few days go by and I ask about the money. James tells me that the bank was holding it for a couple days just because they had to make sure the funds were there to clear it, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, cool. As soon as you get it, let me know because I have to catch up on these bills. You left them behind. I got to get caught up on them. For the next week, I'm calling and I don't hear anything until James answers one day and says, hey, I got to swing by and pick up my computer. James gets to the house and I ask him about the money. He tells me, I can give you like $200. That's all I can do. Me, that was a slap in the face. I was the one that paid for your dad's cremation under the guise that you would pay me back. And then when I get the check, I ask for half of it because I'm trying to help you too. And then you tell me you about to give me $200 from it? It was a slap in the face. I told James to keep the money and that I would find another way, including raising the money on social media. He defensively asked, what do you mean? So I told him that I would talk about some of the things that are going on in life and talk about why I needed the money. Going through a court case, yada, yada, yada. James looks at me and he says, if you say something about my boyfriend on social media, it makes me want to say something about you. This was my career. This was my best friend in the entire world, the person who knew the most about me. And then they just sat there in front of my face over money, threatened my career. They didn't even stop to think about the ramifications that would have had on the kids. They did not see the kids. They were not in the kids' lives at that point in time. So had I lost my career, had I lost my source of income, where would the kids have gone? And make matters worse, I was genuinely scared because, again, this is the person that knew the most about me. You know all my dirt, you know all my secrets. And y'all know how cancel culture is. The thing about me now versus the thing about me then. Now, I will snitch on my own self before I let another person blackmail me, which is one of the reasons why I'm sharing all of my dirt with y'all. That was very different from my response back then. I shut down because I didn't know what to do or what to say, and I was fearful of what might happen. They said that they would give me half if I didn't say anything on social media. I agreed. Tell me why. Over the next several weeks, I had dozens of our mutuals contacting me, telling me that I'm trash for blackmailing James out of his dad's death benefit. Again, this is my lifelong best friend. There are a lot of mutuals. Betrayal is an understatement for what I felt. Fast forward to September of 2021. A lot of y'all will remember this moment that I'm about to talk about, the EBT card. That month we had caught up a little bit more on bills, but I was still struggling financially. We had no food in the house. My fridge was bare as hell. I remembered that my son had a PEBT card. It was like the pandemic version of it. And he still had like $200-$300 on it. My plan was to use that card. It had his name on it and everything. And I was going to get food for the house. Remember the last time I saw the EBT card, James had it when he moved out. So I texted him and asked him, can you please text me the PEBT card information so that I can get food in the house? Hours go by and I didn't receive any text back. So I called several times. No answer. About 6 more hours go by when they finally text back. They texted back and told me, my lawyer said that if you have any questions, you need to go through him and we will be ceasing communication from this point forward. Texted back and I was like, I'm not asking for any specific information. I'm asking for the card number that has your son's name on it to get food for your son. After several attempts, I got no response. I did not know what to do. So I made a video asking people for advice on what to do because my mom raised me to always take the high road. After making that video, thank you. After making that video, people collectively sent $1,500 and I was able to get my kids food and even more so, get closer to being caught up fully on the bills. That was one moment y'all did more for me than my baby daddy did for his own kids. I'm giving y'all the whole behind the scenes story because first of all, I want y'all to get to know the full me, not just the me that I've put out on social media over the years. I think that not enough creators fully show what's going on truly in their lives. Back to the story. The video got 2 million views within 2 hours. And within that 2-hour span, James called me back with the quickness, begging me to take the video down. I took the video down because they told me that they were getting unaliving threats. And that was not what I wanted. This was still very much somebody this is my kid's other parent. I did not want that. I wanted them safe. I just wanted them to be there for their kids. October 2021. Here's where the story gets crazy. I go outside one day to go clear my mind. And it's been snowing. Snow has always been really peaceful to me. I'm in my backyard and I look down and I see something sticking out of the snow. My son's iPod that I've been looking for the past 6 months. He's been begging me about it and I could not find it for the life of me. It was in the snow in the backyard. Take it in the house and on a whim, I decided to plug it in. You know what I'm saying? Like, see if it works. Leave it on a charger and I forget about it. A couple days go by and I get a call from James telling me that he has been essayed and again physically assaulted by Ryan. He told me that he was safe where he was. He used Ryan's card to go to a hotel so he was physically away from him. But he went on to mention that he texted Ryan's mom about the abuse that her son put James through. James said that one night Ryan got drunk and took advantage of James while he said no. He then goes on to mention one final point, that whenever Ryan would drink, and he would drink every night, he would shit on himself and that James would have to clean it up. He said that he was incredibly happy to be away from the situation. 2 days later, they get back in a relationship with Ryan. I, again, stupidly recorded none of the conversation. This was a person that I trusted. And every step of the way, I thought that they would make the right decision. My heart dropped because I went and immediately told my lawyer about all of this information. And he told me that none of it's usable because I don't have a record of it. Mine was spiraling because I'm getting, at this point, yo-yoed back and forth. I feel like I'm being emotionally manipulated. Go to my room, I plop down on the bed, and right next to me, I just look and the iPod lights up. I'm baffled that this thing still works because it's been outside for the last 6 months. Take it off the charger, I put in a little code, and a text message comes in. I open a text thread and I see it's a conversation between James and Ryan's mom. In this text thread, James is detailing the abuse that Ryan has put them through. Remember when I told you how our house dynamic worked? That I would make the money and James would spend the money. That being said, James was the one who spent the money on the iPods. Therefore, James was the one who set up the iPods. He set up the iPod for my son. He used his own iCloud account. So therefore, all of the text messages that were going to his phone were also going to my son's iPod. It was an exact identical clone of his phone. I saw text messages between James and Ryan's ex detailing the abuse back and forth that both of them went through at the hands of this person. And the crazy part is Ryan's first ex was saved under a different name in their phone so that Ryan didn't find out. And the best part of all, I saw text messages between James and his lawyer. So this whole time, I had a sneak peek at what was going on in James's phone. I had access to every single picture, every text, all of that. I ran to my lawyer to ask him, one, was this even legal? And two, is any of this admissible? He said, one, yes, this is legal. Two, keep every single piece of evidence that you have in that device. My lawyer said that everything in that device was admissible in court because James was the one who set up the device. Want to know one of the most interesting things about the American court system, though? You would think with all of that information that this case would have been a cakewalk after that. The lawyer told me that all of this evidence in and of itself may still not be enough to win the case outright because the court heavily favors women and or birth givers. Make sure you check back for the next parts. We're going to be talking about visitation, the escape from rehab, and the trial. Who the fuck did I have kids with? Part 8. Trigger warning, this story contains SA of the child and adult kind, pedos, and DV situations. To anybody watching, I just want to let you know that I'm going to get to your questions after the series is over. There's a few more things that I want to talk about. I've also been in the comments and I had no idea how many of you had your own individual stories and experiences with James. You guys are putting together so many pieces of the puzzle that I didn't even have. We're going to pick up at the part in the story where we're talking about visitation, the escape from rehab, and the trial. Throughout the entirety of the court case, James saw the kids a total of 5 times. The reason I want to talk about these times is because each one was significant because they were supposed to see the kids for an hour or so, and each one got cut short because Ryan was involved. The first time we made arrangements to see the kids was about a month or two after I got the emergency temporary custody order. Me and James had talked and we had set up that they would meet at the park. They would just take them, just go on a swing set and play for about an hour. Drop the kids off at the park and I head back to my house. I live 7 minutes away from that park. I didn't even have the opportunity to pull into my driveway before James called me and told me that he needed me to pick the kids up. I get back to the park and I ask James what happened. Why is this meeting being cut short? James tells me that him and Ryan have a prior engagement that they're running late and that they need to get to. Get the kids in the car, and just as I'm about to pull off, I overhear James talking to Ryan on the phone about their prior engagement, which was a tattoo or a piercing. The second time we set up arrangements was for them to meet me and the kids at a McDonald's within the same city that I live in. I pull up to the McDonald's, I get the kids out the car. It's one of those McDonald's with a play place. I order the kids food, and while they play, me and James started talking. He starts detailing some of the abuse that Ryan has put him through. And he says that whenever he gets kicked out, he uses Ryan's card. Ryan had money. So he uses Ryan's card and goes to a hotel for a few days. And then once Ryan, cools his head, he comes back. He told me that he wants to leave, but he feels uncomfortable coming back to the house that we own together because my girlfriend is now living with me. We were only talking for 20-30 minutes before James gets a text from Ryan. Ryan is going off via text because apparently James didn't tell him that I was with the kids as well. They had a serious jealousy or insecurity toward me. In that moment, James says, I can't deal with this right now. I have to go, and leaves. She asked me, can I reschedule? And I said, sure, of course. That time that we rescheduled was the escape from rehab. About a month later, and James calls me and asks if I can drop the kids off at our old high school teacher's house. He was visiting with her, and we always had a really close connection in high school. And then after, I get the kids in the car, I take them, I drop them off. I spent a few minutes there catching up with my old teacher. And while I'm there, James tells me that Ryan's drinking has gotten so bad that he had to take him to rehab. He tells me that Ryan shat all over the house and that he had to spend hours cleaning up after him and then taking care of him after he woke up. We finish our conversation and I leave. Something told me Don't go too far. I drove down the block to my brother's house and chilled for about 20 minutes until I got a call saying, Moses, I need you to get the kids. There's been an emergency. I rushed back to my old teacher's house and I asked James what happened, because now this is the third time that you've skated when you were supposed to be watching the kids, when you were supposed to be having your visit. He tells me that the rehab just called and they cannot find Ryan. It wasn't until a few hours later that I got the full story. While the nurses were on their smoke break, Ryan, still drunk mind you, escaped from the rehab, made it a few miles down the road, and then he got picked up by a police officer. How it was told to me, the police officer then takes him to the precinct, and then the parents of Ryan pick him up. This is a 40-year-old man. I forgot to mention this little detail. Ryan already had a warrant for his arrest. Since Ryan is a registered offender of children, part of his probation, which he had to register for 20 years, he had to check in monthly and take urine tests. Since he drank so much, he was not going to pass those urine tests, so he just didn't go. That was a violation of his probation, so they issued a warrant. The cop that picked him up on the side of the road just let him go. Didn't book him, didn't charge him, nothing. You would think that the person that I'm having this court case against, after having a warrant for his arrest, would be enough that it would just be able to win the case outright. No. The fourth time they saw the kids was when the relationship between James and Ryan had gotten so toxic that James had to move out. It's January 2022, and James is now moved out. He's told me that between Ryan's abuse and his drinking, that he couldn't stand it anymore. So when he moved out, he asked me, can I bring his kids to this safe area? The court case was still going on, mind you. I need you to remember that. I bring the kids to his new place, and they stay there for about 1 or 2 days, and I went to pick the kids up. It was a good visit. Just when I thought James was getting back on track, I thought his mindset started to shift, especially opening your own eyes to the abuse that you've been going through. I thought that James would change their mind about the case. Less than a month later, they moved back in with Ryan. Before I get into the 5th time that they saw the kids, I want to bring up something that is very important. A lot of you guys that were in James's live streams during that time were used for emotional manipulation. Whenever James and Ryan would break up, James would take Ryan's credit card and go to a hotel for 1, 2, 3, or sometimes even 4 weeks. Yes, I said weeks. During those times, he would re-download TikTok, and he would re-download it because every time they got back together, he would delete it. Ryan did not like him having social media. But every time they break up, James would go to a hotel, re-download TikTok, and he would start going live, venting about all of the abuse and everything that he went through, saying that they were a domestic violence survivor. It would take all that love and support that you guys would show them. And then when Ryan cleaned up his act enough, or he stopped drinking, they would go back. And they would delete TikTok, and they acted as if it never happened. This happened on several occasions, and although it is not my responsibility, I want to take this moment to say that I'm sorry to every single person who was a victim of theirs. Y'all did not deserve to be taken on that emotional roller coaster. Moving on, we're going to talk about the trial, and we're going to talk about the 5th time that they saw the kids. I want to preface this by saying I did not win the case. It was April/May of 2022, and at this point in time, the court case has been going on for months. And for months, I've been asking James, can you please drop the case? The case was to keep the kids away from Ryan. That was literally it. But after several attempts to try to get him to drop the case, Ryan pushed it to trial. I show up with my lawyer at the courthouse. James shows up with his lawyer, and we go into separate rooms. My lawyer dips out the room for like 45 minutes and comes back with an astonished and confused look on his face. He looks at me and tells me that James is just going to give me what I want. He's going to sign off on the kids not being allowed to be around Ryan. I asked my lawyer why, what happened, because it made no sense to me that you would drag out this court case for months, even when you have admitted from your own mouth that you don't want the kids around this man. Why would you concede right now? My lawyer then tells me that Ryan was subpoenaed, but he did not show up. I asked him why he didn't show up because, again, this is the day of trial. My lawyer tells me that Ryan had a warrant for his arrest, and if he would have shown up for the trial, he would have been arrested on site. His warrant was refusal to register. As a registered offender, in the state of Ohio at least, you have to register every year. My lawyer then asks me, what do you want to do about child support? I told the lawyer in that moment that my biggest concern was that they are in their kid's life. That was the only thing that I wanted. So I told the lawyer to put no child support under the condition that they follow the parenting plan. All they had to do was see the kids every other weekend. And then every few holidays. James and his lawyer come in the room and we sit down and we sign all the custody agreements and everything. The lawyers left the room to give me and James a chance to talk. During that conversation, James disclosed to me that Ryan is going to go on the run, and he was asking James if he'll go with him. He told me that he would never do it, that it was a crazy idea, and that instead he had a plan. James tells me that he's going to wait for Ryan to get arrested so that he can have the whole house to himself. He said that since Ryan was already a registered offender who didn't register, that the next time they caught up with him, he would be gone a long time. This was his idea. This was his plan. After that, we finished up our conversation and we parted ways. Fast forward to the 5th time that they saw the kids. This is about May/June of 2022. James, back in a relationship with Ryan, had just been kicked out again. He was using his card for the hotel room that he was in and going live with you guys. One day I took the kids to the hotel, and remember this hotel because they stayed there for several weeks. My son, to this day, literally thinks that they live at a hotel. I took the kids to the hotel and they had an amazing visit. The next day, I take the kids to my mom's house and I go up to the hotel to go check on James. At this point in time, me and Taylor had broken up and she had moved out of the house. And I was actually contemplating allowing James to move back in because they didn't have any place else to go. He tells me some sob story about all of the abuse that he went through. And once again, I fell for it. And during a moment of weakness, we slept together. And again, I was going through so many emotions that I was not even allowing myself to process what was happening. June of 2022, they got back with Ryan. June of 2022 was the last time that they saw their kids. The only times I've heard from them since in reference to the kids has been when they've asked me if I will allow the kids to be around the new family that they've built, which includes Ryan. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next part, but before anybody asks, I just want to answer this question right now. No, they have not paid a single cent in child support. I'm gonna see y'all in the comments, but thank y'all for being here and thank you for giving me this safe place to express my emotions. Who the fuck did I have kids with? Part 9. Trigger warning, this story contains SA, DV situations, and P3DOs. We're gonna pick back up in the story at June 2022. After we hooked up, they got back with Ryan. That same month, something very interesting happened. Me and James's ex-best friend started talking and developing a friendship. Let's call her Morgan. The reason that's very interesting is because Morgan, when we first met like 4 or 5 years ago, she very much became James's best friend, and she did not like me whatsoever. She very much saw through my shadow, through my mask, all of that. I want to introduce another person, Kim. All right, remember her. Kim owns a radio station, and me and some past friends went on to do an interview on her radio station. Kim was actually dating one of my friends at the time, and the first thing that she said to me was that my brand sucked, and that's why I wasn't getting paid. She was trying to get us to start a radio station on her show, and I could not follow through on anything whatsoever at the time, so she continued to work with my friend while she continued to help me get my stuff together behind the scenes. Eventually, we became really close, and I wanted to introduce her to Morgan because I really thought that they would click. I was right, and we all started talking and developing this really, really deep friendship centered around healing, self-work, and setting healthy boundaries, things like that. I was extremely grateful because for once in my life, I felt like I had found family. These were two people who helped to keep me accountable for the man that I wanted to be. I wanted to grow, I wanted to heal from my traumas, and they were the catalyst in helping me to do that. On New Year's Eve of 2023, Kim comes out, shuts down her business to help me with the kids because she saw how overwhelmed I was. I was a single father at the time, and I was way in over my head. It's really important to note that I was finally at a place where I was beginning to heal. And I hadn't heard anything from James since June of 2022. It was January 2023. Kim comes out and she sees truthfully how bad of shape I'm in. His behavior was completely out of order at home. They weren't eating vegetables whatsoever. They was running me ragged. So when Kim came out, she pushed me to make appointments for like all the doctor's appointments, all the specialists, because my sons have hearing loss. And so we got set up with their cochlear stuff, all of that. At one point, my son had gastric issues and I did not know how to help him. I did not know how to comprehend what was even going on. I was so traumatized by what went on throughout the case at that point in time and just still trying to recover that I was reeling. The truth of the matter is I'm not sure that my son would still be here with us today if it was not for Kim. I was legitimately traumatized from the case. I was at a point where I was so confused. I was so broken and I didn't know what to do. And when she came in, we found out that my son, he had a stool backed up to his colon and I didn't know how to catch it. And I swear on everything, if it wasn't for her coming out when she did, I don't know if he would be here today. After she got my son's health in order, she had to go back to Chicago. You know, she still got to work here, live here, all of that. She came back to Chicago to check on things, and I asked her if she could shut her business down for a little bit longer to help me out with the kids, because I saw how big of an impact she made in such a short amount of time. From the minute that I started posting content with Kim, I introduced her to my followers as my sister, because that was the exact type of relationship we had. I felt like I found my long lost family. Interestingly enough, the second I started posting another woman on my social media pages, I got communication from James. Now, if you watch the other videos, you notice that James has a habit of reaching out to me whenever there's another woman in my life. Even though Kim and I weren't romantic at the time, James was asking our mutual friend Morgan if we were in a relationship or if there was something going on between us. And Morgan told him no. I want to make that very clear. We were truly platonic friends. As 2023 went on, Kim's trips lasted longer and they were more frequent. I needed all the help I could get because my sons are a reflection of me and I'm a lot to handle. Between February and June 2023, I started getting a bunch of text messages from James asking me if I could lift the court order that he signed that stated that his boyfriend is not allowed around the children. I told him absolutely the hell not. I will not allow my kids around that man, but I will allow you around the kids or to have some FaceTimes with them to reintroduce communication under the one guideline that we have joint therapy together, because at this point I did not have any trust for James. That was my only stipulation, and they kept asking the same question periodically through those months, and I kept telling them the same answer. Between that period of time, James calls me and he tells me that he is detransitioning, is going by she her pronouns, and now wants the boys to call her mommy. From this point forward in the story, I will be now referring to James as Jamie and replacing the he, him with she, her pronouns. Jamie calls Morgan with another sob story, promising that they were going to get out of the relationship and promising that they were going to focus on themselves, things like that. It's Kim and I's better advice. Morgan allowed Jamie back into her life. This person, Jamie, became somebody that I did not know. During one of the separations Jamie had from Ryan, I went on a live stream and saw her speaking anti-trans rhetoric. She started saying stuff like she doesn't believe that youth should have access to gender-affirming care. She started saying that trans kids shouldn't have access to certain resources like hormone replacement therapy. I was very much appalled at the person that I saw before my eyes, because every single thing that they had gone through, I saw them speaking out against. I was convinced that they were being brainwashed. You know how the cycle of abuse goes. Jamie, went back to Ryan and then just disappeared from the face of the earth. June of 2023, something really creepy started to happen. Jamie's longtime childhood friend, Nadine, reaches out to me on Facebook Messenger and asks me if I've heard from Jamie. I told her no, and she goes on to tell me that Shirley, Ryan's mom, reached out to her on Facebook and said that she should file a missing persons report for Jamie. She said that she hadn't seen them for quite some time and that she was trying to ping Jamie's phone, but she was not getting a signal. I was teeter-tottering between, I'm not worried, I'm on my own healing journey, that's your life, and you're still my kid's other parent, and I don't want you missing. Ultimately let it go because I was not about to let Jamie and her bullshit disrupt my peace again. Over the next 2 or 3 days, 5 people contacted me asking if I had heard from Jamie. At this point, I had been on this roller coaster so many times, I was a little bit unfazed. Kim was hella worried because she didn't want the boys to lose another parent. And everything that we knew about Ryan, we were not convinced that she hadn't just been disappeared from the earth. If you remember from the previous parts, Ryan's ex has shared some explicit photos of the abuse that they went through at the hands of Ryan. But at this point, I really think that something is wrong. Just last year, Ryan was drunk driving, crashed into a daycare, fled on foot, threw his ID out, and when the police finally caught up to him, he claimed to want to take his own life, so they took him to the hospital instead of jail. With no ID, he claimed John Doe and then signed himself out, thus evading the law on an open warrant that he already had. This was a man that I felt like was capable of doing anything and getting away with it. Once I really gave it some thought and to let the reality sink in that this is an actual possibility, I started contacting every single person in my family and Jamie's family. I called her mom, I called her sisters, I called childhood friends that I hadn't talked to in years. After talking to Jamie's mom, she agreed that we should go to the police station and we should file a police report. She gave me the last known address of the hotel that they were at, and the next day I was going to go to the county that they were in and file a police report. Before I could file, the very next day, I got a message on Facebook Messenger from Jamie. They sent me a picture of them looking out a car window and a follow-up saying, I'm fine. I just want everybody to leave me alone and let me live my new life. I was so pissed off because they had taken every single one of us for a ride. Me, Kim, Morgan, their family, my family, every single person. At this point, I was done and I never wanted to speak to them again. Around that same time in June, me and Kim started dating. And that's my current girlfriend, by the way. Love her to death. She be getting on my nerves, but it's the love of my life. As far as Jamie goes, I was like, yes, go over there, live your life. Me and the kids over here, we good. Didn't hear from them again until September 2023 when they called from a mental hospital. They didn't explicitly say that they were leaving Ryan, but they did mention that he and the abuse and all of the stuff that they went through while in their relationship is what put them in there. It came off as very kind and humble, which confused me, but I played along with it. And we had an hour-long conversation and where they told me about all their experiences and just the journey that they had been on over the last year and a half. What's about to come is very important. During that call, I asked them if they would sign over the house to me. At this point, the house was literally falling apart. The roof was an $18,000 fix. The heat didn't work. There were roots actually growing into the pipes underneath my house. My only course of action was to take out a loan to be able to fix the house. But for that, I needed either them to sign a loan with me or me to have the house by myself. Surprisingly, they agreed and they told me that they have a house of their own now and that I deserve it, so they will gladly sign it over. Jamie said, let me know what to do next. So I called the notary, I called the home title company, and I set everything up so that all they would have to do is sign. The literal notary would meet you at your door. One day later, they ghosted me. I was stuck on what to do because at this point in time, me and my kids are now living in an unsafe house. You have the ability to help, and you are choosing not to. I didn't hear another word from Jamie until 3 weeks later, when she called from another mental hospital. Who the fuck did I have kids with? Part 10. Trigger warning, this story contains SA, domestic violence situations, and pedos. We're now at the point in the story where my baby mama, Jamie, has just called me from a mental hospital and manipulated me into thinking that she's going to sign the house over to me. Before we get into the events of what happened October 2023 and on, I want to talk about a couple of different things. There was 5 times that my baby mama saw the kids from 2022 to 2024. Each one of those 5 times, they were spotted seen in a white car. For years, anytime that a white car would pass on the street, my son Jalen would ask, is that Dada? Mind you, he was still referring to her as Dada at this point in time because the last time he saw her, she was Dad. Anytime we passed this specific hotel that was down the street from my house, my son would ask me, can we go see Dada? Because that's where he thought that his mother lived. These are conversations that I have to explain to my kids now about why their mother chose not to be in their life. That puts me in an incredibly difficult situation because how do you explain that to a 6-year-old and a 7-year-old? There's one other story that I forgot to tell and I want to mention it now because it goes to point the extent that I went to defend a person who was hurting me. Early 2023, I got a call from Jamie's aunt. Remember the aunt that gave us the $60,000 to buy the house? She calls me, cussing me out, telling me that I need to allow Jamie to be around the kids and that there is nothing wrong with Ryan. She said that Ryan's a good guy, he comes from a good family, he has money, and I need to pull my head out of my ass. I went off and I told her that Ryan's not a good guy. And then I went on to tell her that he SA'd your niece. How do you feel about that? Do you still think he's a good guy? This woman told me that SA is a thing that happens in relationships and that it's just a part of life. You are not going to sit there and gaslight me into using your experiences to tell me that that is a norm or that it should be excused. That is a fuck no for me. I told her if you're going to excuse the assault that your niece went through on account of the comfort that this man can provide her because of the money that he has, you are part of the problem. I cussed her out and I hung up the phone. You do not try to convince me that domestic violence is a normal thing in relationships. It is not. Moving on, I want to talk about the events that transpired from October 2023 till now. In October of 2023, Jamie, my baby mama, calls Kim, my current girlfriend, from a mental hospital. Jamie says to Kim, can you hand the phone to Moses so that he can give me my mom's phone number? She deleted her mom's phone number on accident and she didn't have a way to get into contact with her. Ironically, we were already at Jamie's mom's house. I have a very deep relationship with Jamie's mom. Their mom was a second mother to me. On top of that, they're very much an active participant in my children's lives still. We're at Jamie's mom's house and Kim tells Jamie, I can just hand the phone to your mom. She's right here. She hands the phone to Jamie's mom. And when Kim walks in the door, the kids yell, Mommy! Back before me and Kim started dating, she was TT Kim to the boys. She was their auntie. At one point, they slipped up and called her mom because they was watching a lot of like family dynamic shows. We corrected them, and then after we started dating, they kept doing it, and we decided that it was okay. Beside that, Kim was already a mother to those boys before we were even romantic. When Kim walked in and the boys called her mommy, Jamie heard that. Remember that point for what's coming next. Next day, Jamie calls me from the mental hospital, and I had zero interest in talking to her after the debacle of you being a missing persons and me organizing a search party to find you. I was done. I didn't want anything else to do with her, but I was still polite, so I made sure to tell her, hey, I'm busy right now. I will call you back when I have the chance. She rebuts back to me, do you want the house or not? At this point in time, I was very aware of all of the situations in which I have been gaslighted. I've been ghosted by you. I don't trust you. At that point, Kim interjected and played the mediator role. She told me, hey, just calm down and go talk to her. We were in the process of trying to move because the house, again, was literally falling apart. The heat didn't work. The roofing was $18,000. The porch was caved in. This was not a safe environment for the children. Kim was like, calm down and go talk to her, because if she is still willing to sign the house over, we can get this house fixed up and make it livable for these kids. The minute Jamie heard Kim's voice, she responded, oh, and I would appreciate it if you stop having the kids call her mommy. Kim went off. She was like, you don't get to have the right to be angry at the fact that the kids are calling me a name you never went by. The kids have never known Jamie as a woman. They've only known him as James or Dada. Jamie responds and starts laughing and starts in a sing-songy voice, says, have fun with the house. That shit sent me into a spiral, because how do you have the balls to call from a mental hospital and laugh at my pain? That's no knock to mental health. I'm a part of the alphabet gang myself, ADD, ODD, PTSD, all that. But you don't get to call from a mental hospital and laugh at somebody's pain. My situation, I'm trying to keep the kids from surviving a winter where the heat don't work, or having a roof cave in, and you sitting here laughing about that. Me, that showed complete and utter disrespect for myself and utter disrespect for the kids. You don't care. To top things off, I wanna make a very important note. Me and Kim, back in 2023, started a project called the Blue Rose Healing Project. Blue Rose Healing Project was created to provide resources to people that are in domestic violence situations so that they can get out and away from their abusers. It was created to give resources to people that are in marginalized communities, like the Black community, like the trans community, and to provide them with an avenue to accomplish their dreams. Jamie took something that I am so passionate about and tried to use that against me. She said, quote, I don't know how you about to handle your little domestic violence facility when you can't even handle me. You're going to be dealing with people like me all the time. The condescending tone in the little domestic violence facility. That's our ultimate goal, is we want to turn it into a facility that people can come to, take their kids and get out of the situations that they're in. And you sat there making a mockery of it. I cussed her out and I hung up the phone. After that phone call, me and Kim had a lot to discuss. The first thing, we had to process our feelings about that conversation. She was mad as hell. And I think at one point in time, she even said the words exactly. Bitch, how you gonna hee from the mental hospital with your disrespectful ass? It was much needed comedic relief, but it goes to show the level of disrespect that we both went through when trying to help as much as possible. Get off the phone with Jamie, and me and Kim sit down and we have a conversation, and we decide that we have to move. But this was not going to be a traditional move, because I have custodial parents, so I have to file a petition with the court letting them know that I'm changing my address, and they have to take that petition and send it to Ryan and send it to James, or Jamie rather. It's a little confusing. The court then tells me, and tell me how fucked up this is, that Jamie has the right to contest if she doesn't want me to move out of state with the kids. Do you know the emotional turmoil that put me through? Ryan, just in and of himself, he is a man that has escaped from the law on 3 at least separate occasions. Jamie has done every single thing she can to put the boys inside of the house with the person that abused her. These are 2 people who have access to my kids' school. They have access to my home address. I didn't want to give them anything that they could just randomly come up, show up, and pick up the kids. I was scared as hell, but you have to follow what the court says. So I filed a petition. I spent the next couple days stressed out because I was worried about what Jamie was going to say or Jamie was going to do. The 3rd day, I got a notice in the mail. It was my petition form with Jamie's name on it. Based on the rules of the custody agreement, I have to update my address to showcase where I'm living, and they had to do the same thing. They hadn't updated their address, so the court sent it back to the house that we both shared. So basically, Not only did they ghost me, not only did they ghost the kids, but they ghosted the court system. Me and Kim spent the next few months looking for places, and we eventually settled on a place that we found in Chicago. Move was one of the hardest things I ever had to do because we had to emergency move. Let me explain. Remember when I told you about the nature of the dynamic between me and Jamie's family? Her mother, I still very much call mother. She was another woman who helped to raise me. Her sisters are my sisters. That being said, one of her sisters was still in contact with Jamie. I don't blame you, that's your sister. I didn't want anything getting back to Jamie, and then she get a crazy idea like, you know what, you're not about to take my kids out of the state. I'm gonna go to their school and pick them up and take them away. We didn't tell them about the move until the day we were moving. I literally showed up at their house and like, hey, I need to have a deep conversation with y'all. I'm moving and I'm taking the kids with me. We're heartbroken to find out that information. And I have some guilt about the way that I handled it, but I also understand very much the fear that I was living in. We said our goodbyes and we moved to Chicago. I still very much remain a deep part of their lives and they remain a deep part of mine. Last thing I heard was that in January of 2024, Jamie and Ryan got married. So congratulations on the marriage. Now that you're caught up to the present moment, I want to say that there are several stories that I haven't told just because I'm literally still finding out more information to this day about it, and that I will be discussing further in further videos. I do want to address the several people that are watching this video that sent money to James or to Jamie, depending on that time frame, and it was with the intention to send it to the kids. I was not aware of that, and I don't know what they did with that money. You guys have also left an overwhelming amount of comments, so I'm going to be going through all of those, answering some frequently asked questions. I'll be telling more of those stories as they come to mind. Thank you for watching Who the Fuck Did I Have Kids With? And also, if you or a loved one is going through domestic violence, please seek help and text START to 88788. Or if you're interested in working with the Blue Rose Healing Project, please text SLOW-MO to 53555 or hit the fourth link in my bio. You do not have to go through it alone. You are loved, you are supported, and you have a safe space within this community. Thanks for watching, y'all.